Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very rare event. I've known our guest, Dan Kennedy, since 1993, actually before that, but started speaking at his events in 1993. And I don't think he and I have ever spoken together in a room that costs less than $2,000 to be in. So here you are, everybody getting to listen in to our conversation gratis. And I'm really glad that we're doing this. For people that don't know Dan Kennedy, let me give you a little bit of background. I'm pretty well read in the arena of direct marketing and persuasion and sales and propaganda, and I mean anything related to the human mind, I've probably read it. And when it comes to rubber meets the road, make it work, make it happen stuff. There's one person on the top of my reading list, and that's Dan Kennedy. And there are a lot of great books out there, and there are a lot of very valid experts in all kinds of subjects, but nobody has either in the past or the present put it all together, all the pieces together the way Dan has. And like a car needs tires and an engine and a steering wheel and all those things, so does a business. Businesses have a lot of moving parts, and Dan really what was that funny guy on the radio who's, of course, I'm going to blank out on his name, Howard Stern. He liked to call himself the master of all media because he had a radio show and did a movie. But I think Dan actually gets credit for that title, the master of all media. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be with you.
And, as always, we're going to have a wide variety of people on this call, people that are new to business, people that are extremely experienced in business, who we could probably both take lessons from in various esoteric aspects of business. But we're going to pitch this for people who are interested in the fundamentals of business. And I know that the more experienced you are, the more people will value being reminded of the fundamentals and having them exposed to them in a new and different way. Dan has a book out, and Dan, I'm trying to remember how many books you've written. Do you happen to know offhand? I mean, it's got to be.
Yeah, there are 36 in print.
Wow.
And beyond that, there's another handful maybe that have come and gone out of print. The new Psycho-Cybernetics, for example, that I did with Maltz is out of print. But there's 36 in print. This book, The Best of No BS, is a compilation from 12 of them.
Great. And that's something extraordinary about this. Dan, you typically will take one topic in a book and, drill deep. A book on copy, a book on speaking from the stage, selling from the stage, a book on marketing to the affluent, and you'll wring every possible angle out of a single silo of information. This is a book that's kind of unusual for you to put together everything under one roof.
Yeah, actually, to give credit where credit's due, the editors at Entrepreneur Magazine and Entrepreneur Books made the selections. I vetoed a couple and added a couple, but basically they made the selections of what they considered to be the best and most time-relevant chapters out of the 12 No BS books. No BS Business Success, No BS Trust-Based Marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wrote new introductions to each section, but they did the heavy lifting. So it's not only unusual in that it gives people a piece of 12 of those drilled down in-depth books that is able to stand alone. There are 17 action checklists throughout the book. So I say it's a book to use, not just a book to read, although it's 575 pages, so it'll get you through the winter.
And you've got.
It's also unusual. It's also unusual because I get, for the first time ever, to birth a book without a pregnancy.
That's the way to do it. And you've got 52 chapters, so if someone's a slow reader, they can get through this thing one chapter a week in the course of a year. But the beauty of it, again, is that you're covering so many different topics. How did these specific topics get selected? Because one of the things I do when I look at a book is I always go to the table of contents, and if the author and or editors have done a good job, they give kind of a good picture of what's going to be in the book. And you've broken this up into, or somebody has broken it up into 6 particular content areas, topics. And I'm wondering, how did those get picked?
Well, I'm not totally sure of the thinking of how they got picked and, what didn't make the cut. I do know that the idea was to give people key sections out of each one of the 12 books that did not require the rest of the book to function.
Gotcha.
That stood alone and stood on its own. And that, kind of to the point you made in the generous introduction, covered a lot of different moving parts of what it takes to make any kind of business successful. So there's marketing, there's management, there's time management, there's positioning, there's social media marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And they tried to find the most impactful piece of each one of those books.
Gotcha. And they started off with direct marketing, which you have also dubbed it magnetic marketing. Would that be, is that an equivalence, or is there something a little different that you put on magnetic marketing?
Magnetic marketing is essentially direct response marketing with its roots in mail order. And as you know, Ogilvy's famous statement was, only the mail order people really know what they're doing. And that's actually as true now as it was. Yeah, I assure you, the MyPillow guy knows more about what he's doing than the local mattress store operator, even though the local mattress store operator should know more because he's closer to all the data.
Mm-hmm.
The other term I've started to use recently as a substitute or a synonym for it, to try and just hammer it home, is results required marketing.
Oh, nice. Nice. Not just results oriented, because if it's just results oriented, well, maybe you don't get results. But if it's results required, yeah, I like that. And for people that are kind of new to this world, if there are any on this call, don't be put off by Dan saying that only mail order people, and you might say, well, I have a store, or I'm a consultant, or I run a restaurant. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The methodology that the mail order people figured out applies to everything. And in fact, Dan, the very first product I ever bought from Dan Kennedy was basically a big file of mail order ads that he had accumulated over the years. Fascinating, eye-opening, just to read the ads alone. So if you're new to this...
So as you well know, imagine, regardless of what kind of business you're in, process is process, right? We need leads. We need to control and manage leads so we can sift and sort them and mature some into eligible prospects. We need to move them through funnel, platform, process to conversion to buyers. Then we need to convert buyers to committed customers, clients, patients, donors. And out of them, we need customers, clients, patients, donors for life. That's the same no matter what this is. So at the very front, we need response, right? We need to be able to put out a message and have people take action on it. So imagine what the mail order people had to do at the infancy of mail order, and had to get a customer to do. They had to get a customer to clip out a coupon or fill out a form, put it in an envelope, get a stamp for it, and then not lose it or talk themselves out of it by the next day when they dropped it by the post office and put it in a mailbox. They couldn't pick up a phone. Nobody could even, when we got phones, nobody could even charge anything on a credit card until, I don't remember the year, but Joe Sugarman was the first to run 800 numbers in direct response ads and take credit cards over the phone. So they couldn't call you. They couldn't just, while they were laying on the couch, grab their smartphone or their pad and enter their response. This was fraught with peril and loss. So these marketers had to be really, really good, both at messaging and at data, so they could message to market match. And it's infinitely easier now, but of course that also creates slop and casualness and not knowing what you're doing. So it doesn't matter if you're running a chiropractic practice or you're a financial advisor or, of course, the worst thing anybody can ever say is, I'm an internet marketer, because that's like saying you're a Yellow Pages marketer. That's media, that's not a business. But it doesn't really matter what business you're in. At the front end of it, you've got to be able to get people to respond to you at some affordable number. And looking at what was done to make that happen when it was so much more difficult than it is today, then makes what you do today so much more powerful than what your peers and competitors are doing.
Because astonishingly, a lot of your peers and competitors aren't even thinking about the idea of how do I improve response or how do I get response economically. And I can almost guarantee none of them are thinking systematically. For instance, you were sort of describing a process by which you move somebody from first inquiry to first sale to second sale to being a raving fan to being, a lifetime customer. Those things can happen by accident, but they happen a lot better if you plan it out, and very few people even think that way, even people with pretty big businesses.
Well, I have a great example for you. I don't think you knew Jerry Wilson. Jerry's not with us anymore. But Jerry got a fairly good-sized chain of auto parts stores one time as a consultant. And as you say, there's all these moving parts in a business, right? So one is the phone. And two things happen at the phone. There are inbound calls and there are outbound calls. And so Jerry made an investigation of the inbound calls to the auto parts stores. And he found, probably unsurprisingly, that there were a lot more calls on weekends than there were on weekdays, because people are working on their cars in the driveway on Saturday. They have a job on Wednesday. So there was a surge of calls on weekends, which were not answered as efficiently as they were during the week because there were too many calls for the people assigned to answering them. But then he found that 80% of the calls were all the same. The consumer called up and said, do you have a Flibberty Gibbet for a 56 Plymouth? And the guy would look in the book or look on the computer, and often after having put the person on hold, and then he would say yes or no. And the consumer, if it was yes, the consumer would say, I'll be coming in to get it. And if it was no, the consumer would say, gee, that's too bad. And that would end the call. So Jerry said, we're going to change the way the inbound call is answered, right? And his script was, guy says, do you have a part for a 56 Plymouth? Do you have a Flibberty Gibbet? And the guy says, I'm going to check for you real quick. But before I do, the boss wants me to get your name and address so we can send you our package of $500 worth of coupons. May I have your name? So they got to 70% contact information capture. They then sent a package of coupons and a sales letter and a brochure to everybody, including everybody they didn't have the part for that the guy was looking for. But that's not going to be the only part he's ever going to buy in his entire life, right?
Mm-hmm.
With this, the net profit per store went up by 30%.
Net profit. Wow.
Because they turned the phone into a direct marketing function instead of just a phone function. Now, this was pre-internet. I'm telling you, my marketing life divides kind of half and half. Half pre-internet, half post-internet. We just have more tools post-internet. Nothing's changed about process. But if you were doing that today, of course, that person would get an immediate set of email follow-ups. You would still send them the coupon. And you would drive them to a website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how much leverage there is when you do, the one book, the direct marketing book that's excerpted here in this book. Its official title is actually the No BS Guide to Direct Marketing for Non-Direct Marketing Businesses. And so when you make that change and you function by function by function by function, you turn it into direct marketing and direct response marketing or results required marketing, you can have enormous impact.
And so you just described just one change to one business, 30% increase in net profit. So if somebody doesn't already know how powerful direct marketing is, I hope that gives you a sense. And imagine if you did 5 things or 10 things or 20 things. And this book is one of the books that could lead you through finding the 5, 10, 15, 20 or more things you could do to increase the profits of your business. You've got another chapter here, or a part, called branding and local marketing. So this is something, so if somebody has a retail store that's community-based, this book is applicable for them too.
Yeah, there's excerpts here from a book called No BS Grassroots Marketing, which is very local. Although there's some applications for national businesses, but it really is very local. And my co-author in that book, his whole consultancy is about devising grassroots marketing strategies. It's actually a term from politics. And No BS brand building by direct response. And one of its key points is that unless you have unlimited access to Wall Street or Silicon Valley money, building a brand with money, building a brand by traditional brand building, most entrepreneurs and most business owners are going to brand build their way to bankruptcy. So the saner approach is to brand build as a byproduct of profitable direct response marketing. And so that's described in here. And the other key point that relates to both books is that ultimately greatest success comes from direct engagement with customers. So why wait for that? Why go through a giant brand building and awareness exercise in order to ultimately get to the point that you can directly engage with customers when you could flip the equation and directly engage with customers to start with and build your brand by doing so?
Gotcha. I always say if you want to build a brand, sell a lot of good stuff and put your brand on it. and that's part of it.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, if you look at, so there's a great example in front of us right now is the MyPillow guy. So he has sold so far 70 million pillows.
Wow.
Wow, yeah. And you could not have a more mundane, ordinary, boring, commoditized product than a pillow, right? I mean, if you were going to pick something that you said, I'm going to use every kind of online media, I'm going to spend a fortune on television, and I'm going to go build an empire with this product, and I'm going to pick a product that I can do that with, you probably wouldn't pick a pillow. But nonetheless, he has sold 70 million pillows. By doing so, he has built two powerful brands. He has built the MyPillow brand, which he is now extending and can extend to all sorts of other bedroom products, including beds themselves. And he has built a personal brand. He's the MyPillow guy. And who doesn't know him? And he is able to attach that to things that don't have much to do with the bedroom at all. For example, right now, he's selling coffee. And he is but all of that has been created without a nickel spent on brand building. So the traditional approach with normal ad agencies would be to assign a brand to the pillow, sleep well, and spend a fortune advertising sleep well pillows and trying to build that brand so stores wanted to stock sleep well pillows, and you would get them to display sleep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you might never even get to direct contact with the customers by that means anyway. So he has not only built his two brands for free, he has the names and addresses and email addresses and phone numbers of at least 35 million people, if everybody bought two, who bought something from him and who know who he is. And he got that for free. Now, if you do those two things for free and you aren't wildly rich as a result of it, you are the most incompetent boob walking the planet.
Gotcha. And this is
that's brand building by direct response.
So this section, part 2, is a logical continuation of the first section of the book, which is the inner workings of direct marketing. So they're taking it from direct marketing to how do you use this to build brands. And I'm sure you've encountered it. I've encountered it. I bet there are people on this call who've encountered it who have blown through people who've blown through tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in an attempt to build a brand using the advertising agency or the marketing expert method, and it doesn't work that well. Which brings us to the next part of this book, which is so interesting that there's a whole section devoted to it. But as I thought about it, I realized, oh no, this makes a lot of sense, which is personalized marketing. And this issue of trust, which we cannot take for granted, and it's getting harder and harder to get trust. Could you address the issue of trust in sales and business building?
Yeah, in many businesses, and I mean many businesses, if you put selling trust ahead of selling whatever it is that you actually do, you take a more sophisticated approach to advertising and marketing, you automatically get differentiation in the marketplace, which is decommoditizing and creates price elasticity. And you are inherently more interesting. And this is much more timely now than when I wrote the original trust-based book that is excerpted here in this one, because things that people had trust in, their trust in them is evaporating. And they have less and less things they have trust in, and less people they have trust in. Their desire for somebody to trust goes up. And it is now acute. It is not a mild discomfort. It is acute, which means if you do it, if you show up, Earl Nightingale's old description was as the man on the white horse. If you're able to position yourself in that way, you rise above everything in your market, and that leads to there's a whole chapter in there titled "The Power of Prescription." That leads to the opportunity, the power to prescribe instead of to sell. And that's so cool because no matter how good you are at it, and no matter how well matched your products or services are to your prospective customers, clients, or patients, selling automatically has resistance. But prescribing typically has no resistance. So if you decide to go get a new pair of shoes today, and instead of going on Amazon, you want to go to a shoe store, and you drive over to the mall, knowing you are looking for a particular kind of shoe, and you walk into a store, and the person immediately leaps up in front of you and says, "Can I help you?" You will reflexively say, "No, I'm just looking."
Mm-hmm.
Because selling automatically has resistance. If you go to your doctor today for a checkup, now this would not be you, but most people, if you go to your doctor today for a checkup, and he is a doctor you have trust in, and he says, "I'm looking at your lab results here, and your kidney function has suddenly gotten a lot worse, and you need to take twice a day with a meal, and I'm going to write you a prescription for it." You say, "Okay, doc," because he has the power to prescribe.
Mm-hmm.
And that has little or no resistance. So trust-based marketing's purpose is to give you the power to prescribe and liberate you from the resistance of selling.
Gotcha. And if you see how this is unfolding, if our listeners see how this is unfolding, we started talking about this thing called direct marketing and why it's so good and different tricks of the trade you can use. Then the book transitions to, okay, what's the goal? What's the end goal here? Well, the end goal is to build a brand. And Dan perfectly described the benefit of building a brand, because you can then sell additional product lines, and it's fantastic. Not the missing piece, but the next piece to this is, do people trust you, and have you created a climate of trust? Have you engineered their trust? So this is why it's so important to have a book like this, the No BS, the Best of No BS, because there are multiple moving parts. If you knew a lot about, quote, direct marketing, but didn't understand the brand building piece and didn't understand the trust building piece, you would never get the full value of direct marketing. If you were aware of the importance of trust but didn't understand the mechanics of direct marketing, you'd miss the ability to take those mechanics and amplify your results dramatically. This is why it's so valuable to have somebody who's done it all, who has also put it into a book, so that you can basically lay everything out on the table and see all the pieces that you need. And I would venture to say, Dan, I wonder what you think about this, none of this ultimately is rocket science, but if nobody lays it out for you and shows you that, well, you need this, you need this, you need this, you need this, and you need this, you need this, if nobody lays it out for that way, then there'd be no way you'd ever know. You could never figure all this stuff out on your own.
Well, you might get to knowing, but probably slowly and expensively. Our own experience is always a lot costlier than when we are able to take advantage of other people's experience. And but often, their experience and ours is in silos, is in pieces, and you don't get to see it all connected. So if you, like, when I took over a very troubled company, I immediately figured out who were the 3 or 4 top turnaround guys in the country who did this again and again and again. And I accessed all the information about them and by them that I could. But I was really getting only one piece of how do you go from this to a thriving, prosperous, successful business. How do you turn its tarnished brand into a good brand, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what happens a lot. I mean, you just described it exactly. Somebody can understand the mechanics. In the online world, you find mechanics, right?
Yeah.
So somebody can know everything there is about designing and engineering a website, except how to make the thing sell something.
Exactly. And that's so dangerous, because a lot of business people will go to web designers thinking that, or web companies, that they're going to solve the problem of how to use the web to sell their product or service. That's never going to happen in a million years. Well, maybe a million, if you had a million years to try every single web designer out there, but they don't know anything about selling except selling web services.
I did a lot of work in the TV infomercial industry, as you know, for 15 years. And I was at the annual convention once, and my number one client, Guthy-Renker, who people maybe know from the intellectual property shows like Think and Grow Rich and Tony Robbins, or the big brand we built, Proactive, a $1 billion brand. So one time Greg we're at the booth, and Greg Renker's introducing me to 3 guys from a big brand name appliance company. And they're very excited to tell me that they have decided to do an infomercial, and they have managed to get Francis Ford Coppola to produce it. And I rudely burst into laughter, which was not really appreciated by anybody. And I then made it worse by saying, I have a piece of unsolicited advice. Go find a 60-some-odd-year-old grizzled veteran of door-to-door selling, preferably vacuum cleaners, who's got one JCPenney suit with a reversible vest and cigar or cigarette burns in it, and bad breath, and is not particularly pretty, but he sold a lot of vacuum cleaners. He's probably got 1 foot bigger than the other from sticking it in the door to keep it from being slammed in his face. You're probably paying Francis Ford Coppola $500,000. You can pay this guy $5,000, and don't let Francis Ford Coppola do anything without getting it approved by the VAC guy. Because Francis Ford Coppola doesn't know shit about how to sell anything, and the VAC guy does. We can hire cameramen, but it happens a lot. On the other hand, you can have somebody who conceptually understands certain things, like brand or trust, but has no understanding of the mechanics of results-required marketing. And they're just going to spin your wheels, and cost you a lot of money.
Exactly. I mean, there's you can have all the theory in the world, and it's not bad to have a lot of theory. It's not bad to have a clear goal that you're trying to hit, but you better have some mechanics for getting there. And it's kind of shocking how few people have even a glimmer of just the mechanical stuff that you need to do to make all these concepts work. We're coming up on the end of our time together. I'm going to try to squeeze one more in. We've gone from this magical thing called direct marketing or results required marketing. I love that. Better than results oriented. We've talked about why you want to be a direct marketer, because you want to build a brand for free, and a brand's very valuable. And we've talked about the issue of people trusting your advice, which is not an easy thing to get. The very next section in the book is on wealth building. And we probably won't be able to talk much about it, but other than to say this, I think we've both seen people that have made a tremendous amount of money, and somehow none of it stuck. And it seems to be, it's not just enough to be a good businessman and understand all these principles and all these mechanics and execute beautifully. You also have to have a wealth consciousness that involves keeping the money you make. Any comments on that?
Gary Halbert, who we both know well, the late, great Gary, said of himself, I have the capability to make money of a wizard, and I have the ability to keep money of a pig. And you just, he and you just described exactly what happens a lot. So on the front end of it, if you understand why money actually moves from person to person and place to place, because money has reasons. Money's actually the most rational actor we'll ever meet in our lives. You're irrational. I'm irrational. Every human is irrational. Money's a rational actor. So if we understand that, we can do a much better job of attracting it on the front end. And that connects to everything we've been talking about so far. Then sort of on the back end, if we understand it, we can manage our business, manage ourselves, manage both our thinking and our behaviors so that we retain a portion of the income that passes through our hands, and that turns into permanent wealth. And I always talk about present bank and future bank. And so most people are completely focused on the present bank and are not simultaneously thinking about the future bank. And all the wealth is in the future bank.
Interesting. That's a great way to look at it and to keep on track. Well, we've only touched on 4 of the sections of the book, and each one of these sections that we've talked about has multiple chapters. So this is, it's called a book and it's priced as a book, but it's really like a MBA between the covers of a book. And I bet this book, if you've got this book and what's in it under your belt, you could probably run circles around a whole lot of MBAs. So if you've ever felt like, gee, I wish I could go and, get an MBA, or I wish I could take this course or that course, you know what? Get this book. Start here. And I bet you'll be using it the rest of your life. You'll be drawing on it forever because there's just so much in it. And I think everybody who's been listening gets now that there's a lot of pieces to this, and everything works so much better when all the pieces are working together. And I want to go back to what I said at the beginning of this call, which is there's a lot of people I respect. There's a lot of great books out there, but I don't know of anybody. I haven't heard of anybody. I haven't read about anybody who has been in so many different mediums, so many different industries, so many different businesses on the ground. We're not theorizing, but actually rolling up his sleeves with clients and making things happen. You probably haven't counted how many millionaires you've made, but I would venture to say you might have made as many millionaires as some of these big corporations that brag. Microsoft is always claiming how many millionaires it's made from stock owning employees. But without even starting to count, I can think of a dozen people that went from rags, and I'm one of them, to literal riches, to a large extent, with the help of Dan's insights. So it's all in this book, The Best of No BS, the Ultimate No Holds Barred Anthology. I'm so glad Entrepreneur had this great idea, Entrepreneur Press. I'm glad, and I think they did a really good job of figuring out what they needed to put in. Sometimes it's easier when somebody from the outside takes a look. They're not so close to everything. I think they did a pretty good job of figuring out all the things that you do that are essential along these lines, the lines that we've talked about so far, and laying them out one piece after another after another. And I guess people can get this in stores. They can get it on Amazon.
Amazon.com. You can go to entrepreneur.com/bookstore, Barnes & Noble. They're scheduled to ship on September 6th.
Coming up soon. Well, great, Dan. Always great to talk with you, and this was a historic moment. I don't think you and I have ever had a conversation that other people could listen in on that didn't have a 4-figure price tag attached to it. It's funny, people just sometimes don't understand the power of a book, and I want to strongly recommend this one, whether you're an old hand or whether you're new. I'm also, as Dan was talking, I was thinking of all the people I want to give it to. Friends I know who have businesses, who have tried to explain direct marketing to them, but it doesn't work in 5-minute blips. They're hardworking people. They're thinkers. They're readers. And I'm thinking my local library. My local library has to have this. We actually have a bunch of libraries within shooting distance of where I live. So I want to make sure they all have it too. And I want to make sure you have it. The Best of No BS, the Ultimate No Holds Barred Anthology. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it a lot.